Right, welcome back. And as we said at the very beginning, we'll be speaking about the formation of a new cabinet. Let me welcome our distinguished guests, Dr. Khalid Nagati, former Vice President of the World SMEs Association. Thank you very much for being with us.
My pleasure.
And Dr. Hani Abul Futuh, Economic Consultant. Thank you very much for being with us. And let me start with the assigning of Engineer Mustafa Madbouli to be the premier, the next premier for the next stage. Your reading to the choice, please.
I think it is a good choice. The Prime Minister has been in the former cabinet for some time. He knows the critical issues in the country. He knows what problems are facing and the challenges are facing the country. So that would give him an advantage for pursuing the mission in the next formation for the cabinet. I'm full of hope. I'm very hopeful that the formation of the new cabinet would be in a good position and for the benefit of the country.
Yes. Actually, Engineer Mustafa Madbouli was the Minister of Housing, and then he took over as a caretaker during sometimes at the end of Prime Minister Sharif S.A.E. Period. And in fact, he was assigned with many of the housing units in many urban areas and with many of the projects that were carried out within the issue of the infrastructure and the housing. When we speak about that what kind of cabinet are we expecting?
I totally agree with Dr. Hani that we didn't have the luxury, or the President does not have the luxury to bring a Prime Minister from out of the current government because we don't have the time to educate a new Prime Minister of the current situation of the country and the obstacles that we are facing. So I believe it's a good decision. However, I was hoping to have an economic advisor or someone to assist the Prime Minister, Engineer Madbouli, to overview all economical obstacles in the government, because the major problem, major obstacle Egypt has now is economic. It is not acceptable by any means that to have your major problem is an economical problem and you don't have a Ministry of Economics and you don't have even someone who's overwatching these economical files that is really needed to be solved immediately for the government. So I agree that Engineer Madbouli is a good choice. However, I'm really hoping to have an advisor to be responsible for all economical files, or at least my best choice is to bring back the Ministry of Economy.
Bring back the Ministry of
Economy, yes.
To serve for another term?
There is no Ministry of Economy in Egypt. It's been seized since the 90s. So we don't have an economy.
We have a Minister of Investment and
yes, we don't have a Minister of Economy
and Trade. We have a Minister of Industry. We have a Minister.
The last Minister of Economy, it was at the time of Atfabid.
Yes.
So now it's really needed to bring back Ministry of Economy because our major problem is economy now. So, or at least to have a Deputy Prime Minister for economical issues.
Or we have a kind of committee that is...
We do have a committee.
That is formed from different
We do have a committee.
ministries.
We do have a committee, economical committee, between many ministers.
In fact,
yes, we do, headed by the Prime Minister himself. However, this is the same issue that we had over the last cabinet with Dr. Sharif S.A.E, because the head of the committee is not an economical expert. His background is petroleum. So we need to assign Deputy Vice President, Deputy Prime Minister to oversee the economical committee. If we don't have a Ministry of Economy, at least we need to have a Deputy Prime Minister who is an economical advisor to oversee all the economical files and issues and obstacles, overseeing as well the committee, the Economic Committee in Egypt. this could be worked this way.
When President Fattah S.A.E. assumed his second term, he spoke about several files. The most important that he prioritized were education, health, and the economy. And he said precisely that the coming phase will be very hard. It will be very challengeable. From your point of view, how far are those files would be put as priorities in this next government, and what exactly are the challenges of that?
May I add another file to the critical issues that shall be on the shoulder of the new cabinet? Unemployment.
Definitely. Which is part, of course, of the economy.
Yes, because one of the major challenges, as outlined by IMF last month in the conference held in Egypt, organized by IMF and the Central Bank, they highlighted that unemployment is one of the major issues that would be facing the country, because by year 2028, the population, the working population in Egypt will have another 20% in the employment market, and we need to find jobs for these people. So this is very critical, and this should be given a high priority. Certainly, I would agree that health, education are also very important. As we all know that the former Minister of Education has developed or has proposed actually, yes, a new education system, which is debatable in many areas. But I think this is the important thing, to put education in the forefront of the priorities in Egypt, because without proper education, we will not have sustainable jobs, we will not have improvement and progress in many areas. Definitely health, the health of the Egyptian citizens is a priority, is a very high priority. We should be given a high attention as well.
Yes. Yes, indeed, those are important files, but what steps should be taken, or in what stages do we need to implement all this in order to fulfill what we aspire for? If we speak about education for an instant, and the education system for an instant, and Dr. Hani here spoke about an important issue, or highlighted an important issue, in order to find a solution for unemployment, or in order to fill the vacancies that are needed. There should be a kind of education that students have to from the very beginning until the very end, in order to be able to really satisfy the needs of the market.
Well,
what steps?
You really tackled a very important issue here. I believe unemployment rate is one of the obstacles that is facing Egypt over the last many years. But we have to connect it to another issue, which is the informal sector. Now the government is really tackling and putting pressure on bringing the informal sector into the formal sector. They are tackling all projects that work without any official documents to propose to the government to apply for commercial register and tax ID and so on, to be joining the formal sector. However,
who is applying this? Because you're speaking about a very important file, which is integrating the informal sector into the formal one. This is a very important issue in the economy. We're speaking here about 60% of the Egyptian market.
Yes, it was supposed to be the newly formed SMEs institution. This is supposed to be one of the main jobs. However, the focus on integrating the informal sector, the current informal sectors, into the formal sector, from my opinion, I'm not being negative, but it's not. If we succeeded to bring 10 to 15%, then we have a good result, because these people have inherited already their businesses for so many years from the fathers and grandfathers working this way. It is so hard, extremely hard, to change their mindset to work with documents and pay taxes. And even if you tell them you get tax exempt for 5 years, they still do not have trust in the government in this issue. So why don't you leave this and don't put so much pressure on it? However, you can go to the graduated students. Each year you have 900,000 graduations every year, average. Most of them will be unemployed for the next 2 to 3 years. So why don't you approach them, make workshops in the universities to bring back all these students who are graduating next year, to change their mindset that when you graduated, the SME's institution will help you to do your project, to do financial analysis, to do feasibility study for you, 1 to 3, to be able to be to have an SME's owner, or to have your own project, even if it's a small project. This is the only way you can really have a positive effect on the unemployment rate.
We'll come back to this point, because we all know that during the first 4 years, the President has allocated already 200 million pounds for the SMEs.
Yes, it didn't go for SMEs.
We'll get back to this point. Okay. Let me get here to Egypt's economic point. And we have been through many challenges during the past 4 years, and we have been able to overcome some of the challenges, but still there are so many challenges to overcome. First, your evaluation to the economic status of Egypt at this current stage.
The economic status of Egypt is improving, actually, since the implementation of the economic reform started in year 2016, November 16, and the macroeconomic indicators are now improving, and we witness actually, or we witness the results of the reform in terms of the lowering the inflation rate, which it was 36% July last year. Now we are talking about 11.4%. In terms of unemployment, and first quarter last year it was 12% or so, and now we are speaking about 10.6 or 10.4%. The stabilization of the forex market, the foreign exchange market, we have now a single foreign exchange market. In the past, we had different grey markets, different exchange rates.
The liberalization of the
exactly, after floating the Egyptian pounds. The proceeds of the expats transfers now have soared and now increasing. We witness a continuous ongoing increase in the expats transfers. Egypt is progressing. The reform, the economic reform program, is achieving its objectives, and we have still 1 year to go until Egypt finishes the last phase of the economic reform, and by then I would hope that the average citizen would feel the results as well.
Well, yes, hopefully, of course. But in 1 year, isn't this a bit early?
Just the glimpse of the improvement.
Of the fruits. You didn't answer, by the way, the education. You spoke about unemployment, but you didn't speak about that.
Education is one of the, of course, it has to be improved. Angela Merkel, when they asked her, we need you to equalize us with the teachers in terms of salaries and benefits and so on. She replied, she told them just one thing: how can I equalize you with the people who have educated you already in the first place? So investment in education is very essential, and we don't have the luxury to choose not to invest in education for the next few years. If you really want to build Egypt for 2030 or whatever it is, the government plan, you have to invest on students and also on teachers. Education is very important. You cannot just have...
Very much indeed.
Yes.
Very much indeed. Getting back to this point that we ended with, which is the SMEs and the allocation of...
the initiative, the President's initiative for 200 billion.
The President initiative that was carried out by the Central Bank of Egypt and some of the committees he initiated. And from your point of view, how far is this initiative fruitful?
The President has announced this about 2 years ago, and he said to the youth and younger generation, he told them, I have allocated 200 billion for 4 years, 50 billion a year for your projects. I need you to be SMEs owners. I need you to have your own businesses. Government cannot hire you anymore. So your problem is with the fund, so I allocated 50 billion a year, okay? The definition of SMEs that I have been calling for the last 7 years, now from total revenue project or total revenue from 1 million to 50 million is considered small business. From total revenue from 50 million up to 200 millions are medium enterprises. So basically the fund...
I thought it was starting 50,000, not million.
No, that's the micro. That's the
100.
micro. No, that's the micro.
That's the micro,
yes.
Okay.
The small is from 1 million total revenue to 50 million. The medium is from 50 million to 200 millions. Who's saying anywhere in the world that company is making 50 million pounds a year is considered a small business? And companies making 200 million a year is considered a medium sized business. However, it's too late to modify it now. It's been implemented already and integrated into the system.
No, there is never too late, by the way.
No, but we can do something else, much easier. We can allocate 20%, for example, from the initiative, from the 200 billions to micro finance, which is below the small enterprises. So basically to help the younger generations to start their own businesses. Because it's impossible for someone who just graduated this year from school.
Why would somebody who is starting his career with 50 million pounds would need funding or would need any
I don't think that's
assistance?
practical. It's not practical, I feel.
No one who's just starting a business will ever make 50 millions a year for the first year. It's impossible, okay? And it also connects us to another point, which it will have a very good positive reflection on the Egyptian GDP. Basically, the gross, the GDP is the total income of the country. So basically, the people are focusing now on the exterior debts. Exterior debts is almost 80 billions. The number itself does not bother me at all, because we have to compare it as a ratio, as percentage to the GDP. So it's now average 36% of the total income, the total GDP of Egypt. So it's still in the safe area, like Tariq Amr said, the governor of the CBE. He said it's in the safe area, and I agree with him. However, most of the people are talking now about how to decrease the number, the amount, which is 80 billion, how to decrease it. It's too much, it's been doubled since 2014. Okay, I agree with you, but how to decrease it? That's not the issue, to decrease it. The main issue is to increase the GDP. I'll give you a very small example for our viewers to understand it. If a family's income is 5,000 pounds a month, and they pay 3,500 installments, car payments, and so on, the balance will not be enough to live their life. So basically they have two options. One is to decrease their payments, which takes longer time, and the other issue, the other scenario is to increase their income. So that's what we have to do in Egypt, to increase our GDP, to increase our income. So basically the ratio will be, instead of 36%, it go to 30%, 25%, so it will not affect us at all.
Very much indeed, and this is why when the President spoke in his speech at his second term, he spoke about that the next 2 years would be very hard in order to complete the mission.
But you can do that without SMEs. You cannot do that without
I would
SMEs.
see that. But let me here take, how did you read this 2 years? 2 years to achieve the fruits of the mission, or to fulfill the mission that has been carried out for the past years. And at the same time, he was speaking about the national mega projects that we went through and the hopes to be able to bear the fruits of those in this upcoming stage. You're reading to that?
Well, I think 2 years is achievable, provided that the concerned authorities and the citizen join hands with the government,
Yes.
join hands with the government in order to achieve the reform and
The reform program, yes.
Yeah, the reform program successfully. Speaking about the mega projects, I'm fully convinced that the mega projects have added great value to the economy and to the GDP, because these projects have used or have created jobs for thousands of people, and the unemployment rate was down mainly because of these projects, because these projects are labor-intensive projects. So I think it is achievable, and I would hope that by then the picture, the economy of the country would be in a much better shape.
Dr. Nageti, you said we can achieve our target without the SMEs and then without the informal sector, or without
I said we can't achieve
emphasizing on that. So how?
No, I said we can't achieve. I said what I said, we can't achieve it without
we
SME.
can't achieve
We cannot.
it.
Not we can. We cannot achieve it without SME. Yes.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly. This is because that surprised me, by the way.
Yeah, no,
so
we cannot.
how do you view the next stage? How can, in order to be able to do what you said respectively here, to work on the GDP, to increase it and all this, we have to work hard on attracting more investments, initiating the falling ones that are not yet on
Yes.
the ground, and helping them to survive. I guess many things, right? What
Yes.
do we need?
First of all, of course, attracting new investors, international investors. But however, we have to understand and we have to agree in one issue that international investors, when they come to Egypt to invest, first thing they do, they have dinner with local investors. So
Right.
if you really want to attract international investors, you must keep your local investors satisfied. Because you can imagine what's going to go through during this dinner. If the local investor is not satisfied, then there's no way the international investor will invest his money in Egypt. Number two is the defaulted manufacturers, that they are already closed. Thousands of manufacturers are closed in Egypt, either because they don't have enough money to pay their bills or loans, and some of them are being traced by legal actions as well. So the government has to step and help these defaulted factories. They already have a plan for them. They have a certain fund to help them, but I'm only asking the government to minimize the required documents to float these defaulted manufacturers. It is still very much complicated. The process is long, it takes a long time, too much documents are required. It's not going to get the point.
So you mean here applying the one-stop shop, not just in the Suez Canal zone, but rather in all Egypt?
Of course. As Dr. Hani said, we have to join hands, government and citizens. Governments cannot do everything by itself. President cannot do everything by himself.
To work in tandem.
Yes.
And that makes me return back to our main topic, which is the new cabinet. And hence we're speaking about the economy as a first challenge to the country to progress in its vision, or in its 2030 vision. Then what exactly are the steps a new government would need, or strategy it need to put in order to really face or confront the challenge of economy?
The new government indeed should examine the present status, analyze the major obstacles to achieve the objectives of the reform and match all their plans to achieve the objectives of the strategy of the Egypt Strategy 2030. So without having or without linking the action plans, the steps to the Egypt Vision 2030, their efforts would be in vain. So the achievements made so far are not bad. They need to carry on by having by developing the plans that are actionable and realistic, and they can measure. They must measure the outcome of the plans in a very transparent way. So this average citizen would see the progress and evaluate if the cabinet, the ministers, are doing the right job or not.
Monitoring system, you mean?
Transparency. Transparency in evaluating the outcome of the plans and declaring it in a very transparent manner.
In which way?
Using their own different channels available to the ministers. They can speak to the public, they can hold conferences, they can engage in dialogues, open dialogues with the public.
Right. So, through their information center or their spokesman, their spokesperson or their
yes, but they have to develop more advanced tools to communicate more proactively with the public.
Do they need to speak to the public, or do they need to communicate in order to know how the public see their achievements?
Both ways. Communications must be both ways to communicate, have proper communication with the public, and then transparency in promoting or in not actually
in announcing
the outcome to the public.
Investment law, and the investment law has been put and then amended, and then it was reshaped, because we can say that it was not amended but rather reshaped totally
yes.
at this last stage. If we speak about the law of investment, is it the law itself, or is it the implication of the law and how it is applied, and the facts on the ground that really reflect on the investment?
During the previous investment laws and regulations, we had a major issue that really negatively affecting the international investors and not attracting them to come to Egypt, which was that there is no exit scenario from Egypt. If the investor invests his money in Egypt, there's no exit scenario for him.
Bankruptcy law.
Yes, which is the bankruptcy law. In the US, for example, you have 3 chapters for bankruptcy: Chapter 7, Chapter 9, Chapter 11. You have 3 scenarios to exit from the business. So how could you expect international investors to bring their money to Egypt and they have no idea whatsoever when they're going to take it back to invest it in different countries, for example? So that was one major issue I have already tackled many years, for the last few years, and I believe it was already solved with the bankruptcy law in the new investment. This was actually one of the major points that it has to be achieved, and it was. Therefore, Ministry of Investment and Her Excellency Minister S.A.E. Nasr, I believe she has already changed the way Egyptian citizens, investors, and international investors look at the Ministry of Investment and the laws and regulations. Do you really feel, if you go to Ministry of Investment today, you were just there last week. It's totally different, totally different. It's not the Ministry of Investment that we have seen over the last few years. This is true, including the laws, regulations, attraction for investors, how to communicate with public. That's what we need to implement in the rest of the ministries.
I have only, I guess, 2 minutes left for me, and I need in those 2 minutes to understand from you. What should be our expectation to the new government? What should be their first files to put in their forefront or to start with? And what kind of cabinet do we need?
Let me start with the last point. What kind of cabinet do we need? I second Dr. Khal's view. We should have a cabinet with strong economic drive. Okay, so that tackles this question. What are the expectations? The expectations of the Egyptian citizen is that they would expect to see more for the controlling the prices in the market, more controls, more enforcement of the law. We have plenty. We have a jungle of laws in Egypt, but we lack actually the proper enforcement. We need to, well, we expect proper and adequate enforcement of the laws.
May I just add one thing before we close here? The government has announced over the last few weeks that the growth rate has increased to 5.4%, which is normal, that what was expected international-wise, which I really salute them for that. However, if this growth rate is not positively affecting the average citizen, then there's no use of it.
Then the normal citizen should be at the focus of this next stage.
Yes.
Yes, indeed.
Dr. Khalid Nagati, former Vice President of the World SMEs Association, thank you very much for being with us.
Pleasure.
Dr. Hani Abul Futuh, Economic Consultant, we thank you very much for being with us. Thank you. Dear viewers, many thanks for watching. Tomorrow will be another contentious debate with another colleague. Until tomorrow, it's good night.